This video is all about the organisation of a garden. Famously, Geoffrey Smith, who I took over from on Gardener's Question Time when he retired, said that gardening was 10% inspiration, 90% perspiration. Now, I disagree with that. I think it's more like 40% organisation, because however much you run around doing stuff, if you're not doing it in an organised fashion, it's pretty inefficient. So I look after this garden on 1 day a week, and Dave helps me 1 day a week. And just to let you know what that involves, so there's this bit of the garden, which is the courtyard garden. This is the entrance courtyard with the bird topiary. This is the first part of the veg garden. The brassica cage, and then the polytunnel, and then the new orchard, and the second bit of the veg garden. And then the lawn and the sitting area and the eating area. And then there's the old orchard and new rose meadow. And then the working garden, we've got 2 greenhouses, this one and the sunken one. And then we've got some peony beds in the middle, the peony walk. And there's Beetle's Path, which dissects the rose meadow. And then the mini walled garden with the 2 serpentine walks down either side. Now, obviously, there are other little bits as well, like the path going down to the mud hut, the entrance to the field with the big box balls, and the driveway. But these are the main core bits. In the growing season, Dave does most of the hedge cutting and tying in the climbers, and I do the weeding and the veg. And then in the winter, Dave is invariably doing building work, maybe in the house, maybe in the garden. So that's how the labour split. But you can see there's a fair amount for me to be across. And in order to make it work, I have to be organised. So if you open your garden to public, obviously it's a completely different ballgame. You've got to sweep the paths, you've got to fill in gaps in the planting, so there's always something wonderful for them to see. But when it's mainly just for you and your family and friends, then you can decide on the level of maintenance that you want. And I think this is key. Some people are very tidy and want everything in apple pie order. Others are a bit more relaxed. And whatever your attitude is, you will always find that sometimes your garden looks fantastic, and at other times it's a bit, I wish it didn't look like that. What am I going to do about that? And that's the same with every garden. That's the joy of gardening. It can't look 5-star 365 days a year unless you're doing it as a full-time concern. So you need to decide your level of maintenance. And then I'm going to give you some top tips that I think are invaluable in helping you run it really efficiently. And maybe number 1 is a really simple one, but it's tools. And make sure you've always got them where you want them. I use my trowel a lot, and I use my secateurs a lot. So I keep the secateurs where they're ready by the kitchen, in a safe place, and I hardly ever go into the garden without my secateurs. I also use a trowel, so I hang one up in the polytunnel and I hang another up by the potting bench. So I know there is a trowel always on offer. Things like the spade I don't use so often, and so those are kept in a sort of shed we've got. Some people have a beautiful board, and they have the shape of all the tools marked out on the board, the spade, the fork, the shears, scythe, everything, and then they know that everything's been put back. Now, I think that's a really good idea if you've got the space, but basically I don't use that many tools a lot of the time, and I like to have them more ready for action, the ones that I use a lot. So that's one thing. Make sure your tools are where you can always find them. Number 2, what used to be the most labour demanding thing was the lawn. Now, I'm about to get rid of another silly little patch of grass. Come and have a look. So this silly little bit of grass here, this is going this autumn. I'm redoing the yard, getting rid of this and turning it into gravel and redesigning the yard. Little bits of grass are a pain. They're probably too small for a robotic mower, But on my main bit of grass, we have a robotic mower, and that saves me hours, and the lawn looks better for it. I have a mowing edge on nearly all my grass, and this saves that tidying up bit. So here you can see, against this very tatty bit of very dry grass, my mowing edge of granite sets. Elsewhere I have paving slabs. But design your grass so either you can have a robotic mower if you want one and have a mowing edge, and then make all the bits logical, and maybe you just have some a lot longer and just mowed twice or once a year. Certain things you just have to be organised. We've got box moth in the last couple of years, and I need to spray that 3 to 4 times a year with dipel. And so I have a chart in my office which outlines the dates I need to spray, so it's always in my head. And then with my chemicals that I use, I don't use a lot, but with the dipel, I mark actually on the container how many grams I need for weight of my sprayer that I use. So each time I use it, I've got the information there ready, so I don't have to translate it from gallons per hectare or whatever it is, litres per hectare, to my amount in my knapsack sprayer. And I think that's really useful, so you know how much you need. And I have the same for my glyphosate. And those are the two chemicals which, if anything, I use the dipel most, and then the glyphosate. And so I've got that information ready there and then. So weeding is what most people think of as a painful job. I actually quite enjoy it, and I do think it's actually very skilled. First of all, I will never let a weed flower and seed in my borders, ideally. And that is important because even if they flower, something like groundsel, if it starts to flower and you just hoe it or lift it out of the ground and leave it on the ground, it will develop into a seed head and spread them everywhere. And they always say 1 year's seeding is 7 years weeding, or some such thing. And that is very true, obviously. So catch them before they set seed and spread. And in areas like my gravel driveway, I just weed it. I often use a Dutch hoe. Now, a Dutch hoe is a flat hoe, and some people say you need to sharpen them, but when you're using it in gravel, you don't. You're just pushing the gravel backwards and forwards. And I often do that. And the reason I do that rather than spray it often is because A, I think it's almost as fast. It depends how many weeds you've got there. And B, you can selectively weed. So I like the verbascums, verbena, things like that, hollies. I like them to seed into my gravel driveway because I really like that look. And it's much easier to be selective when you've got a hoe in your hand rather than a knapsack sprayer. And that's the reason I think you need to be slightly knowledgeable when you weed, because you need to know what are the seeds that you want to keep, the seedlings, and what you don't. So I don't think it's necessarily a job for mugs. I would never plant any bed when it's got perennial weeds in it or a big annual weed seed burden. I will always get it completely clean before I plant it, because otherwise you're spending an outlay on these wonderful plants, you're putting them in, and the bideween or the ground elder will get faster, they'll grow far faster than the plants you've just put in, and they'll smother it, and then they're impossible to get out. So make sure you've got your bed really clean before you plant it. Now, if you are going to use a herbicide on an area like a gravel drive, some people will just use glyphosate, a contact weed killer. Well, it's systemic, so it goes through and kills perennials as well. But some people will mix it, and they will mix it with a residual herbicide. And a lot of people will use something called flasiosulfuron. And that can be mixed with glyphosate according to manufacturer's instructions, and then you spray it on. You kill the bits that you see translocated with the glyphosate, and then you have the residual aspect as well. So if you have maybe 1 or 2 applications of that in a year, it will keep all the weeds down. Now, I don't use that because, as I said, I like some seeds to self-seed there. And if you use those chemicals, you should have your PA1 and your PA6, the spray exams. And I always recommend that if you're going to use chemicals in the garden, and most of us will use biopesticides like the dipel, which is very friendly and very safe to use, you still need your PA1 and your PA6 technically. And it's maybe a 2-day course, a very simple exam, and then you use them much more widely. And I think there's such a great range of biopesticides that it's worth doing. Now, watering can take a long time. And we had a question on Gardener's Question Time recently saying, I have no water point in my garden, what can I do? But her house wasn't by her garden. And I think the importance of water points and water butts in relevant places is really critical. So I think the obvious answer to that lady was just put in a water point. And so you can do that relatively inexpensively. And I think if you've got ready access to taps in good places, so in each of my gardens, I've got a ready access to a tap. And I think then I have a length of hose that leads to the bit that I know, the furthest bit that I need water from that point is near the tap, hidden away somewhere, so it's easily accessible and I can just plug it on the tap and use it. And also I have barrels all the way around the garden, some of them under dam pipes, which are invaluable, but in a summer like this they went years ago. And then I also will fill up the barrels and they'll have a bit of hose near the tap by the barrel so the barrel can be filled and then I can just dunk a can in and do it. So for my veg beds, I often much prefer using a can than a hose because I just prefer that sort of watering. And then in my greenhouse, capillary matting saves me so much time. And if you get a good capillary matting, you can get something like 12 gallons of water per square metre, mixing the unit, sorry. But it's a phenomenal amount. And so it reduces my need for watering in the greenhouse massively. And my tomatoes are all in baseless pots in my greenhouse onto earth beds, and that helps a lot. So they will get watered once a week or something like that. So just plan your watering wisely. A lot of countries have adopted the grey water usage, and I think that's really important. In the UK, we haven't really done it that much. I haven't adopted it here because we don't have any mains water. So all our water comes from the spring. So I feel that we're sort of reusing our own water anyway in a sort of roundabout way. But perhaps we should do something more about grey water. Of course, I've got my baseless pots. So these yews were planted in here as little bushes. I popped them in, and that was probably 10 years ago, I can't remember. Baseless pot, so I just cut it out the base of the terracotta pot. Never been watered or fed since. So I've got about 80 baseless pots, very little attention. No feed, no water, it saves so much time. All the old-fashioned books said divide perennials, but talking to lots of perennial nursery people and people who grow a lot of perennials, they never divide their perennials. And I have to say, I'm not sure I've ever divided many perennials here, unless I need more plants, and then I will divide them. But things like asters possibly do when they become like donuts, so they're literally bald in the centre and you've got plants around the edge. But I've never done that. I've never had the bald donut asters. So don't divide your perennials and don't dig over your borders. They'll just bring up annual weeds to the surface to germinate, and that will divide perennial weeds. And you'll probably lose some nice bulbs and plants which you forgot were there at the same time. It's lovely growing lots of plants from seed, not only vegetables but also flowers, but it's remembering when to sow them. You know, if you don't remember when to sow your wallflowers, sort of about April, May, June, then you're forced into buying them plants, and then you can usually only get mixed colours. So I have charts which I pin to my office wall which show when to sow what perennials. Things like the hardy annuals, so much better if you sow many of them in the autumn. Things like the vegetables, it's critical that you sow them at the right time often. And I use Joy Larkham's book, and in the back she's got charts of what to sow when, and they are brilliant. They're succinct and really good for the UK. So have the charts that you like and know, have them in a place that's readily accessible, and make sure you do things at the right time. And then my last final 2 points, but I think the most important: never put your garden to bed in the autumn. Dreadful expression. The garden needs to go on all through the year because it maintains your interest in it and it keeps you fit. And an awful lot can be done in the winter. I'm always as busy in the winter as I am during the growing season. And then also, you must keep your body fit. I think for a garden to be well organised and well tended, the gardener needs to be fit and on the ball. And after I've done a day in the garden, and it's a long, hard day maybe, then I will often go and use a cross trainer, the rowing machine, stretching afterwards, and I find that really helps me stop getting a lopsided body, keeps my core muscles really trim, which is so important. And then the diet. But if you grow all your own, 10 to 1, you'll have a pretty good diet anyway. So the final most important tip is really look after the gardener.